gentlemen, Bill Ferguson of South's Finest Meats, the official sponsor of the Stingray Show, has a message for you.
Everything we do here is fresh and custom made, custom to order. I tell people when they come in, if you don't see what you like, ask somebody. We've got the capability to process it, make it. If you want a different blend of hamburger meat, we'll do your brisket blend. We'll do your chuck blend. We'll do your sirloin blend. We do all that right here. We are a butcher shop. It's what we do. So please don't be afraid to ask if you don't see what you like. We can make you any size patty you want. We can make you any amount you want. People call me and say, well, how many patties come in the box? Well, ma'am, how many would you like in a box? You want 12, we'll put 12. You want 25, we'll put 25.
That's just one of the many things that South's Finest Meats has to offer, the official butcher shop of the Stingray Show. And with that, this is the Stingray Show, and coming up on this edition, we are going to be taking you back in time to Knoxville, Tennessee, and talk with an individual who played in 39 games for the Volunteers from 2002 through 2005. He was Mr. Football in the state of Tennessee, and in 2005, he was a preseason All-American and a Heisman candidate. Former Volunteer running back Gerald Riggs joins us on this edition of the Stingray Show to talk about his career up there in Knoxville for the Volunteers.
Hi, this is Tim Brando with a reminder. Look out, you're about to feel the buzz of Stingray.
This is Stephen Ray, a.k.a. Stingray, coming to you live from Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
I'm Heath Hopkins. I'm here in DeSoto County, Mississippi, right outside of Memphis, Tennessee. Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you feel that responsibility to pay it forward and give some kid a chance coming up in the ranks, kind of like Tony did for you?
Why do you think I'm talking to Stingray tonight?
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
No, I mean, look, no.
Heath, Stingray, Here's the deal. When you get involved with Texas, it's like getting married to a stripper. and let me explain this. It looks good, kind of sexy on the surface, yeah. But then you get the baggage, you get the drama, you get all that eventually comes with it. And that's what you get with Texas, and that's what the Big 12 learned.
And Heath, any thoughts on our show moving forward?
Hey, with the Stingray Show, if you don't like it, you better learn to love it, because it's the best show going today, baby. Woo!
And of course, we want to welcome you inside the Tuesday morning edition of the Stingray Show. Heath, how are you doing, my friend?
Here and happy. I don't have a choice. Do any of us have a choice, Stephen? Yes. I don't think we have a choice. I think you just have to choose to be happy, right?
Yeah. So, Heath, can you believe it? We have been doing this show for about 6 years, and we finally have our first former Tennessee Volunteer football player about to join us. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people from a lot of schools, current players, former players, yes, current coaches, tons of former coaches, and tons of former players. But I was a little shocked when you told me that. I was like, really? We haven't had a player from Tennessee on. No. That took me back. I was like, get out. So I thought we had covered everybody. So, yeah, I am absolutely looking forward to marking this one off the bingo card.
And Heath, you notice the new swag behind me? I've got the T light. That actually was a birthday present from my birthday on January the 20th, getting a little bit new swag for the Volunteers.
A tea light's better than a tea bag. So
yes. So, Heath, what do you remember most about Gerald Riggs?
Yeah, just briefly talking to Gerald, I had interviewed him in SEC Media Days. If I think long and hard enough, I might remember a question or two that I asked him. Media Days, there's always a common theme. Like one year, the whole lawsuit and Coach Fulmer thought he was going to be served with papers, so he didn't show up, and he called in and did all of his interviews over the phone. And one year, Mike Shula was making his debut, and everybody was losing their mind. And Shula looked like a deer in headlights. He looked just frightened.
Yeah.
Eli Manning was there one year. That was the kind of the big talk. Would Spurrier return? That was the big talk. So there's always kind of a theme at media days, and after a while, they kind of run together. And I was trying to think of the theme when Gerald was there.
Right.
It might have been Eli Manning year. I'm almost certain it was. But yeah, I look forward to talking to Gerald and just talking about his time there up on Rocky Top. And, he had a phenomenal high school season. I'll ask him some questions about that as well.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please help us welcome to the Stingray Show our very first Tennessee former football player. And this guy played from Tennessee, like I said, in 39 games from 2002 through 2009. He had 383 carries total for 2,016 yards and 10 touchdowns in his career there at Tennessee, and he helped lead the Volunteers of Tennessee to the SEC championship game in 04 versus the Auburn Tigers. Gerald, how are things with you this morning?
Doing great, fellas. How you guys doing?
Doing good, man.
We're here and happy. Gerald, I noticed when I was doing a little bit of research on you, you were a state champion in high school in football. And you guys went 15-0, but more importantly, it was the very first state championship for Red Bank High School. Talk about how special that was, because I'm going to guess, I don't know, I didn't look this up, but I'm going to guess Red Bank hasn't won any state championship since you've left.
No, they haven't, unfortunately. No, that was extremely special for a lot of reasons, man. That was it was the first time our coach had been back since, I believe, 78. He coached for 27 years, and he hadn't been back to the state championship since 78. So that was a big deal. That year also, unfortunately, his wife had passed during right before the football season started. So that was another thing that you could add to it that made it really special. And then on top of that, the year before, we probably had the worst year he probably ever had as a high school coach in terms of record wise. I believe we went 5-5 in the regular season and then lost in the first round. And then I remember, I think we were picked 4th in our region that year, and then we go on to be ranked in the country. So it was pretty interesting how that year played out. But it was definitely special.
I always ask people on the show this question, former players, and I always ask them, like, what's the most fun you ever had playing football? Was it Pee Wee when you were scoring, 8 touchdowns a game? Was it middle school when you figured out you were good at this? Was it high school playing with your boys? Was it in college when, everything's just kind of exciting? You're playing in front of big crowds for the first time. Was it the NFL where it's like, hey, I finally made it? What was the most fun you ever had playing football?
Ooh, that's a tough one, man. Man, I would have to say really, I would honestly have to say college, just because of everything that was surrounding what was going on. Obviously, every game is big. You're playing with some of the, the best players the country has to offer, playing against some of the best talent the country has to offer. And you just had a great time, man. You got to know a lot of interesting people. High school was fun. Obviously, won a lot of games and all of that. But college was just a really great time. It was my first time out of the house. So I got to actually do what I wanted to do between games. It was a lot of fun, man, just playing in college ball. And like I said, a lot of those guys that, I got a chance to play with, man, they were great guys, man, some interesting guys, some really funny guys that, just created a lot of memories with.
So, Gerald, before we go any further, I do want to ask you, what are you up to these days, and where are you coming to us from now?
So I'm back in Atlanta, Georgia, my hometown where I'm from. They're here in Marietta. I now currently coach at Mount Bethel Christian. See how how to get the shameless plug and with the hat. And Also running my training business that I do outside of it, where I work with young athletes, man, trying to get them ready, trying to get them prepared for what they want to get to, what they want to accomplish at the next level. I've been doing that now for about 10 years, since I put the football down finally for good, and just been trying to enjoy that, and just enjoy giving back to young guys, man, and helping them realize their dreams of playing high level football.
Now, Gerald, if the opportunity ever came about, would you ultimately want to coach on the college level?
Sure. I would absolutely love to coach on the college level. I think that the opportunity again to be in that mix, coaching in big games every week, and just being able to have a positive impact on a lot of these guys, man, because when you've gone through it, like myself and some other guys that have actually been out there and played and gone through what they're going to go through, you have a lot to offer them in terms of just wisdom and some guidance, and especially now, man, where there's just so much pulling at them. There's so many different things that are going on, man, and it's really hard to focus on just going out there and doing what you love to do. I'm a pretty simple guy when it comes to when that kind of stuff. I just love the game of football, man. So any opportunity I would get to coach guys, and you obviously want to coach some of the best players too, right? So you want to get an opportunity to work with some great talent, and just to be able to travel around and do that. I miss all of that stuff, man. I miss traveling around with the guys. I miss week to week, trying to figure it out how to get a W. So I would love to coach college football if I got the opportunity.
Gerald, I always have empathy and sympathy for guys named after famous parents, because that puts pressure on you guys. And I tell people all the time, I was like, if Eli Manning's name was Eli Smith, like, you wouldn't be putting this pressure on him. You wouldn't think about this. There's added pressure to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I always sit there and I'm thinking, that last name's going to open some doors, but it's also going to open up some expectations that are unrealistic as well.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that briefly. What was it that we'll start with bad and we'll end on good. What were some of the bad things of coming out and doing this, and then what are some of the good things that happened? We'll start with the bad.
Like you said, man, there's always high. Everybody has all these high expectations. They think the first, because you have a dad who played in the NFL and was highly successful and in his own right, and probably should be in the Hall of Fame. That's another conversation for later. But they think that automatically you're just you're going to be a Heisman candidate the first time you get on campus,
right?
And that's just not reality, right? Like, you got to go through the growing pains just like everybody else. The level of expectation is just, it gets sometimes just absolutely ridiculous. I think the worst thing that I ever dealt with, though, was the fact that people thought that I was in that position simply because of him. And that was the one thing that drove me a lot of times, was because my parents, mom and dad, who both were very instrumental in my life and still are, they never put pressure on me to play football. As a matter of fact, they tried to get me to do everything else. I remember the first sport I ever played was golf, right? And then I went out there, funny story, I went out there and played soccer, and I was like, man, I'm tired of playing all these different sports, man. I want to play football, because I just naturally wanted to play. It was something that I cared about and loved to do. And I remember you go out there, in soccer, and you're usually, if you're a faster guy, you're playing a certain position. So I'm out there pushing kids around, getting red cards, and they put me at goalie because I was pushing kids around, and they're like, well, you can't do that, so we're just going to put you at goalie. And then I remember first game I was at goalie, I went to go and block the ball and got hit in the face, and remember, I couldn't do anything about it. So I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. So I'm gonna give my parents a hard time until they allow me to play football. But just, the fact that people thought that, I didn't earn everything that I got. Some people, a lot of people, I wouldn't say a lot, but some people, you know how people are, man. That people can say, well, he only got there because of his dad, and because of his name, and the awards he got and the opportunities he got and this and that. And they didn't know how hard I had to work, man. They didn't know how hard that every morning at 5 o'clock, my dad would say, hey man, all right, get up, go do what you got to do. And I get up every morning and go lift, and then go to school, and then after school run track and do that all off season, and go through everything that everybody else has to go through to get themselves prepared, and then go out and perform well. Nobody plays for you. You got to go out and do it yourself. So I think that was probably the worst part about it for me.
I'll share a quick story before you get to the good part, but Jim Belushi, the actor, the comedian, he's still on TV shows today. He's still doing movies today. Mm-hmm. But his brother John passed away, and at the time, John was the absolute funniest comedian on the planet when he passed away. He was on Saturday Night Live. He was doing stand-up shows. He was hugely popular. And when Jim tried out for Saturday Night Live, they said, well, he's not as funny as John. And Jim had the greatest comeback. He goes, and nobody else on the planet is either. And that struck me. And I was like, wow. I was like, Jim Belushi could be like in the top 10 funniest people on earth.
Yeah.
But no one's ever going to give him that credit because he's not as funny as John.
Right.
And that's just terrible to think about. And so, but after he kind of used that and kind of made his own path, it was one of those things. And like I said, I don't care if your last name is Manning. I mean, poor Arch Manning. He's got to live up to uncles and grandfather.
Yeah, he's got it bad. He's got it bad, man. I wouldn't want to be in his shoes at all. I honestly would just I'd probably just quit football just to piss everybody off if I was him.
and you look at guys like Steve Spurrier Jr., who's coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Spurrier Jr. is a very well-respected wide receivers coach, and he's been doing it for well over 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, well, he's not as good as his dad. I'm like, his dad is one of the greatest of all time.
Like the Belushi line is. No one else is either.
Right.
Exactly.
Like
so
that's
the crazy thing of it.
You can put him in the top 5 greatest coaches of all time, probably.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and I always have sympathy for you guys like that. With that being said, what are some of the good things that did happen? We won't concentrate on the bad. We'll concentrate on the good now. What are some of the good things of having that last name?
Well, you didn't pay for dinner very much. That was always great. But no, I think the fact that, it did open doors. When people, I look at, because I deal with kids in recruiting now, and I deal so much with it, on the player side, and you see how kind of things work with how parents are, and, they're just so crazy about it. You know what I mean? And every moment is stressful trying to figure out what their next move is. My recruitment, when parents always ask me like, hey, what did we do for recruiting? what kind of advice can you give? And I'm like, I can't really give you any advice because my recruiting was totally different than yours would ever be. I just remember waking up one morning, and all of a sudden, you had 10, 15 schools calling you like, hey, we want you to come play for us. And so, there wasn't really much thought about it other than when I got down to like my final 3 or 4 schools that I wanted to choose from. But the recruiting process was probably about as easy as it gets from my standpoint, just from the fact that I really didn't have to do anything. I think back then it used to be, you would have, maybe your top 4 or 5 schools in the country would have like a top 75 camp, and you guys would go to, and you go there and kind of show your prowess and show what you can do. And, maybe get a chance to talk to the coach face to face or one-on-one. Whereas I think I went to 2 camps. The first camp that I went to was Tennessee's camp, where I actually showed up with my stuff in a book bag, and Coach Fulmer was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm getting ready to do the camp." He said, "Oh no, man, we're just gonna hang out and talk for a little while. You don't have to do nothing." And so that was kind of an interesting deal. And then the other one was LSU's camp when Nick Saban was there at the time. And as you can imagine, that camp was absolutely just the worst thing I've ever been to in my life, because it was like, dude, I didn't think I was going to come here and actually be in college practice, for 2 days, and he put you through it. But after that second day, he was like, "Hey, why don't you come up to my office, you and your dad, and have a conversation?" And then, that was the end of it. So, it was pretty different. My recruitment was different than most people, but I just remember, being part of that, and then also, you know, obviously carrying the same name and doing the same thing, same position, same sport, and just kind of having that connection with my dad. You know what I mean? That we can have great conversations, and we can talk ball, all day long amongst everything else that we talk about. As father and sons, as both being fathers now, and all those different things, man. I think it just allowed for a connection that I'm extremely thankful for.
I know Stephen has a question. Stephen, I was going to ask real quick. You get recruited by Nick Saban before he was Nick Saban.
Well,
what was that process like of Saban recruiting you and that talk in the office when he invited you up there? What was that like? What set him apart from other coaches, if it did?
So, on a serious, on a fun, I should say on a funny note. On a funny note, he was Nick Saban at the time. It was just everybody else hadn't figured it out yet, right? Like, he was every bit of what you saw him be at Alabama. He was he was he was Nick, right? Like, if you watch Nick and you pay attention, he was Nick. You came in, he had the button for the door back then, right? Like, it was, I never forget when I was on my visit there, and they were playing Florida that day, or that weekend, as a matter of fact, and Florida beat him by like 50 that day. I can't, it was bad, but I know he was not happy the rest of the weekend. But, I came in, I sat down by myself. I was there by myself that weekend. My parents were very hands off when it came to the recruiting aspect of it. They're like, "Hey, look, this is your choice. So, just go and come back and tell us about it." But I remember sitting down in the chair and the door closed, and I was like, "All right, this feels more like an interrogation than it does feel like a recruit." But no, we had a great conversation, man. I love that guy, man. He was, I don't have, and this is no slight to Coach Fulmer or anybody, but one of the few regrets I have in football was that I did not say yes to that, because he was obviously, goes without saying, a phenomenal coach, but he was very much like my grandfather, right? Like, in the way that their mentality was, their personality, and they just always pulled the best out of you. Not that Coach Fulmer wasn't that guy; he was great. I'm extremely thankful for what I learned under him, and the opportunity that I got there at Tennessee. But, Nick was just one of those special people. And even with what I do now, I take a lot of cues from the things that he did in college as well. When I got to be with him briefly with the Dolphins coming out of school, he was just a really cool coach to play for, man. And a lot of people give him, and I think now people are seeing it when he's on game day, how funny he is, and what his personality really is, that you don't really get to see. A lot of people didn't get to see, for years up until now. But like I said, he was fun to be. He was fun to be around, and just fun to guy to talk to, man. He was good.
Gerald, I want to go back to you and your father briefly. What are some techniques and tips that your dad taught you early on that really helped you during your entire football career?
Don't fumble the ball. Hold on to it. You ain't no good nobody if you can't hold on to it. So that was the first one. But no, I think, really, it wasn't so much technique that my dad really taught me. It was just the level of commitment that you have to put into your off season. That's going to pretty much dictate how your season's going to go, right? Like, you have there's the unfortunate bounce. Sometimes you have injuries, but if you take care of yourself the right way, you eat the right way, push your body to your limits, and pass your limits during your off season, that usually is going to translate to you having a good year. And one of the things that my dad, throughout his career, he took a lot of pride in was just the way he approached the off season. And
Right.
so that was the main thing that I really took from him. I was fortunate to where, I got an opportunity to be around a lot of football growing up. So, and like I said, I loved it from the very beginning. So I was very, very aware and very astute about what was going on around me. Getting a chance to go to NFL practices as a kid, getting ready, going to college practices, going to different games, all these different things. I was that nerdy football kid, man, that just watched everything and was like, okay, hey, that looks like, somebody does something and has some success. All right, well, I think I'm going to try that, and see if that works. So, it was, I think, just having those opportunities, right? And that's going back to what we talked about, what was the good thing about, having a dad that, with the name that played, was being able to have those opportunities to, see practices and sit in meetings and listen to different things and really having a lot of knowledge that most players don't have going into high school or going into college.
Now, Gerald, you talked about that you took a recruiting visit to LSU with Nick Saban. You also took a visit to what is known as the Black Shirt Defense in Lincoln, Nebraska. Now, what was that experience like for you?
I was ready to go home the second I got off the plane.
Did you go when it was cold?
Yes. So
that's the reason, I bet.
So it was cold weather doesn't bother me. My mom's from Boston originally. So I grew up, going to spend my winters, Christmas time with my grandparents in Boston. So it wasn't the cold weather, man. There was no trees. It was flat. The women were ugly. It was terrible, man. Like I mean, other than the fact that they were, a storied program, that was about it, man. Like there really just wasn't anything else that I enjoyed about that trip. It was just one of those trips, man. I remember a funny story out. I mean, probably going to want to talk about this guy too much because he's sitting in prison, but I remember we get there, and you know how you go on a visit, they have you doing all kinds of different stuff, and you go to parties and you go and hang out with the players and stuff. And I remember Thunder Collins trying to sell me some rims, and I was like, what the hell is going on here, man? Like, this is crazy. I was like, bro, I was like, get me on the plane and get me out of here. You know what I mean? I really took the visit because the running back coach at the time, he was a cool guy, and they were really adamant that they wanted me, and he came down to Tennessee. He came down to Red Bank, I don't know, a handful of times. And I was like, all right, man, I'll take the visit. You know what I mean? I'll take the visit. It is Nebraska. You know what I mean? You guys are a top 5 program at the time, so I'll take the visit. But I just remember getting there, and it was right after they lost to Miami in the national championship. And there was actually a couple guys that were from Chattanooga, the Bullocks brothers, the twins who were played there. I played against them in high school, and they were my hosts. And it was interesting because, again, getting to hang around those guys was fun. But like I said, man, this was back when they could put you on a private plane. When you were like one of the best, the guys that they really wanted, they put you on a private plane on a Friday, they get you there. And I just, like I said, I just remember getting off the plane. I was like, it's freezing cold. There ain't nothing out here. Their idea of fun was going to some party that was at an old schoolhouse. I was like, nah, man. This is after having gone to LSU, Tennessee, and having been to Miami a couple times. So I was like, yeah, this is not for me, man. I got to get out of here as quickly as possible.
Hey, can you imagine going on a recruiting visit and someone asking you, hey, you want to buy some rims? What? What?
Yeah, that was one of the crazy. That honestly, to this day, man, I was like, I could not. I was like, what is really going on here, man? And then, of course, a couple years later, you see kind of some of the stuff that happened with those guys. I was like, well, that makes sense.
Right.
Gerald, we have guys on the show all the time, and we ask them fun questions of what is the worst recruiting pitch that you get? And we've had some guys like, man, I had this one coach call me at like 1:45 in the morning, never talked to him anything.
Mm-hmm.
He said, he called and woke me up, and I'm like, what? And he said, it's just terrible. He said other times, guys a lot. Tom Luganbill, who's on the ACC Network, ESPN, College Football Live. Thomas told so many stories, and he said, there's a coach at USC at Southern Cal, and he's like, son, if you come out here, we'll get you to meet Michael Jackson out here in Los Angeles. He goes, Coach, isn't Michael Jackson's dad? He goes, well, hell, you can meet his brother Tito. We've heard all these funny stories about coaches, these bad pitches and things. What were some of the bad pitches, or just like, is this guy serious right now? What are some bad recruiting stories that you remember?
Man, geez, there were a lot of them, to be honest with you.
Feel free to take the next hour and tell these stories.
I never forget. So I guess it was my, it was my junior year, and that was when they first were able, coaches were first able to start talking to you and whatnot. And my first couple years in high school, I was kind of a knucklehead, man. So I didn't really take school that serious. So I was going to have to go to summer school to get my GPA to match my ACT score, because my ACT score was high. And so I remember Dennis Francione called me at the time and was like, hey, man, we want you to come to Alabama. And previously we had a guy that that I ended up replacing my freshman year. He went on to play at Alabama as a linebacker, was a safety in high school, but went on to play a linebacker. And my freshman year in high school, I came in and basically, filled his spot. So there was a connection there. But he was like, hey, man, you need to come to Alabama. And I was like, okay, why? Like, what's so special about Alabama? And he was like, well, considering how, it looks how you've been handling your grades, man, like, you're the only guy that we're the only school that's going to take you. And I was like, yeah, you're going to get a lot of people with that pitch, man. I was like, nah, Brett, I'm straight. You can, I'll talk to you later. I was like, I'll see you somewhere, but it won't be at Alabama. That's for sure. You probably won't be there long anyway. So, which he wasn't. He got fired, like, I think, like the next year or something like that. So that was crazy. And then you had Michigan at the time. They had this crazy rule where, and I think Urban Meyer pissed them all off because he didn't observe that rule at all when he got to Ohio State, was once you were committed to a school, they didn't recruit you anymore.
The
right?
gentleman's agreement.
They would say, well, hey, we're just all right, we're done. We're gonna wash our hands of it. And I remember I recruited, or I should say because I was being recruited by so many schools, I just committed just to get, kind of people out the way, right? Like just say, hey, look, I just don't want to deal with a bunch of the attention. But I remember when I did that, I immediately called Michigan and was like, hey, I don't take this as though I'm going, this is legit. I just wanted to get some people off me. And I remember Lloyd Carr was like, well, we really like you, man. We just, but at the same time, you are a Tennessee guy. So we kind of, and I was like, well, what the hell is that supposed to mean?
Right.
So I was like, I guess Michigan's off the list too. So it was just like, and then there's some stuff, man, that I really don't want to get into, man, because it's like they try, back then it was kind of the Wild West in terms of what they could do, even so much more because nobody was really knowing what they were offering, right? So you had, let's just say, you had guys, you had schools, sending all kind of people at you and doing all kinds of different things, man. So it got pretty crazy with some of these recruiting pitches. I think the funniest one though for me was I had a close friend of mine that I was actually going on a visit with him because he was a good player, but he wasn't getting recruited by as the top schools at the time. So we went on a visit to Tennessee Tech, right?
Yeah, my wife went to Tennessee Tech.
Yeah, and I went, and I'll never forget. I went with him. He was like, "Man, go with me." So I was like, "All right, fine." I go with him. And when I get there, Tennessee Tech's like, "What are you doing here?" Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how did we get you here on the visit? And I was like, I'm just here with my buddy trying to support him, And they were like, and they their recruiting pitch to me was out of nowhere. They were like, "Well, hell, are you even interested in Tennessee Tech?" I was like, I mean, not really. But they was like, well, they were on this tour, and the coach immediately said they were the tour guide. There was literally a tour guide, kind of like a regular college visit, right? Like the normal students go on, and the lady was talking about some statue that they have on campus, and the coach immediately turns to me. He was like, "Hey man, that could be you. They're going to build a statue of you if you come here." And I was like, "Bro, what the hell?" I was like, "Bro, I was like, I'm good on statues, man. I'm just here to support a buddy."
Right.
But like I said, man, it was crazy, man. Just some of the stuff, and it wasn't necessarily just like the little moments like that. It was just corny little phrases, and again, somebody that knows that grew up around football and heard a lot of coaches talk and heard a lot of different things, man. You can just tell how corny some of these coaches were, man, when you talk to them, and it was like, "Nah, I don't want to play for you, man. I'm good."
I'll tell you a quick fun story about Tennessee Tech, and I know Steven's got a question for you, but my wife went to Tennessee Tech, and she loved her time there in Cookeville. But on the tour, as you were talking about with a regular student, they got this big golden eagle. Then they're the Eagles there, they're Tennessee Tech, but they have this big golden eagle on top of one of the buildings. This thing's huge, and the tour guide is walking around with these parents, and my in-laws are wonderful people, but they are in church every Sunday, every Wednesday, every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But they're there every time the door's open.
Sounds like my
the tour guide sits there, and he said, "That eagle right there," it said, it's magical. It will fly away if a virgin ever graduates Tennessee Tech." It's like my in-laws were like, "You're not going to school here. Where does my wife go? Tennessee Tech."
Wow. Well, it was funny because when I went on the visit, of course, they had a game that day, so we're watching them play the game, and I think the only people in the crowd were the parents, right? And at that time, this was I want to say this was 2000, I think. But I do remember it's like freezing. It was like cold, right? But there's this one guy in he's got like a purple wig on, and he's got like this tie-dye shirt, and he was sweating. And I remember my godfather was there, and he was like, "Now that guy's definitely on LSD or something, because there ain't no way to be sweating out here. It is that damn cold." He's like, "You thinking about going to school here?" I was like, "Nah, not with one guy in the stands that they have. That's the only fan that looks pretty much like the mascot." But it was funny, man. It was a good time, man. When you think back on it, because it was just a great time to spend with my dad and a good buddy of mine. But like I said, man, that Tennessee Tech will have always has that memory with me, and a good one, because we played for a state championship there as a coach. But like I said, Tennessee Tech, man, is one of those places, man, that just always has that memory for me, just because of that statue comment.
That's funny.
So, Gerald, what ultimately, because you talked about LSU, Nebraska, Miami, as well as others, what ultimately made you decide to play your college career at Tennessee with Phillip Fulmer?
So the honest to God truth is, it was really a business decision.
Okay.
It was just simply a business decision. It had nothing to do with where I wanted to go. To be honest with you, I wanted to go to Miami. That was where I really wanted to go. I wanted that one so bad, and my mother was like, "Absolutely not." she was like, I'm not turning you loose at 17, 18 years old down in South Beach, Miami. And I was like, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Moms know best.
Yeah, she was like, she absolutely was like, she just was not going for it at all. Which is probably fine. I probably would have had like 5 or 6 kids before I would graduated. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, it's Miami, dude. Like, what do you expect, right?
Right.
But no, it was like I said, it was purely a business decision. I was really, with Miami, and that was the true story. My mom was like not about it. So it really came down to LSU and Tennessee. And I don't know if you remember that particular year, but they were right behind each other. Right,
Yeah.
like they were 2 and 3 in the polls. Tennessee had beat LSU during the year. I was at that game. LSU comes back and beats them in the SEC title. I was at that game. And the one thing, going back to what you asked about Nick Saban was the only one, and I will say the only coach out of all the coaches that I did talk to in the recruiting process. He was the only coach that had a legit plan for my career.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Like, he had a legit plan. Like, he was like, hey, you're going to come here. We're going to do this, and this, and this is what we're going to do with you. This is how it's going to go. I mean, he was very matter of fact about what he wanted to see happen in my career. And it lined up with everything that I wanted to do.
Right.
But I'll never forget that Florida weekend when I was there. My father called. I called my dad and I said, hey, man, I'm going to commit. And he said, no. Get your butt home. Let's talk about it. And I was like, well, he said it's my choice. He was like, I told you to get your ass home and we'll talk about it. So he's like, don't tell them nothing. So I said, okay. So get back on the private plane. After, they take me to the president's house. They do all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Met with the president of the school, went to breakfast, all that, came back. And my dad was like, all right. How'd it go? I was like, it was great. He's like, all right, well, here's the bad news. He's probably going to leave.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean he's going to leave? He was like, well, more than likely you guys are going to win a national championship within your first couple of years, which they did. And then he's like, after he wins that national championship, he's out of there.
Right.
He's going to go try his hand in the NFL. I don't know how my dad knew that. I don't know who he was talking to, how he knew that. But I was smart enough to know that coaching changes are not what you want to deal with,
right?
Especially at the college level. So, I made it final. I made it final that I was going to Tennessee, and I'll never forget it. They had I don't know if you remember, they had the Bobby Dodd Awards here in Atlanta, where they would name the top high school player in the country and top lineman, top skill guys, all of that. Well, I got the skill guy kind of version of their award for the top player in the country. And it just so happened that Nick Saban was the keynote speaker that night. And so I'll never forget, my mom and I are sitting in the green room, having a drink or two, just kind of getting, trying to get ready. And Nick walks in and my mom sees him. She's like, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And I go up to him, shake his hand and say, hey, coach, how you doing? And the first words out of his mouth were, he's like, I ain't going nowhere. And I was like, how the hell did you even know that was the reason why I said, went to Tennessee? He's like, don't worry about it. He's like, just know that I know. So I was like, that was kind of a crazy deal. But like I said, it was just really a business decision. I didn't want to deal with, uncertainty when it came to who I was going to be playing for. And there was really, and to me, Tennessee and LSU was really no different at the time, right? Like, the only difference was just, the area code, and probably the food. But other than that, it really wasn't much difference between the two. And like I said, I just didn't want to deal with the uncertainty of who my coach was going to be every year and having that question hanging over my head. So I knew Coach Fulmer wasn't leaving at Tennessee anytime soon unless they dynamited him out of there, which they eventually end up doing. So, that was, that pretty much was what made the decision for me.
The funny thing is, Gerald Saban did leave and went to the NFL. You got to play for him there. But you could have played for Les Miles and run the toss dive.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he seemed like an okay guy, I guess. I don't really know. I got my chance to beat him. That's all that matters. So,
right.
Have you ever read the play toss dive?
What's the difference?
Well, I
right?
mean,
Like,
usually when you're tossing the ball, you're hitting
yeah,
the
well,
outside.
I'm saying, like, you know, I always remember back to when they was like, yeah, man, the toss dive where they, you know, it's just basically a short toss, and I was like, well, just hand it off. But you know, like, I just never understood. Like, it was kind of because I always remember running the toss. You know, we ran it in high school, and you know, at every level I played at. But it was always a chance to spread the defense out. I never
Right.
understood running the dive from a toss action. That just never made sense to me.
I think there's a reason why there was only one coach that ever ran that.
Yeah, that never made much sense to me. I never understood it.
Yeah, everyone's with you. Les Miles is the only guy that ran the toss dive.
Yeah, well, that probably explains why he got out of there pretty quick, I guess.
So, Gerald, your first game action came in 2002 against Wyoming. What do you remember most about that first game for you in a Tennessee Volunteer uniform?
It sucked because our uniforms were ugly as hell. They did that. Adidas did that. Adidas did that atrocious, big, nasty, long, wide orange stripe, right? That we only had that uniform for 1 year. It was hideous. Yeah, I remember putting this on. I was like, I should have went to LSU, man. This is awful. But
I don't remember that uniform. What year was this?
This was 2002. Go back and look up 2002
I'm
Tennessee
looking at it
uniforms.
right
They're
now.
probably the worst uniform to ever don college football. It was bad.
Yeah.
But no, I just remember it was in Nashville. We played in Titan Stadium or Nissan Stadium at the time, which was really cool. You know, first time, you know, as a college player, man, get on the road, get to travel, get to go stay in the hotel the night before, and you know, doing all that sort of stuff. It was fun. It was a good time. I didn't get to play that. I got to play a little, you know, sparingly.
Right.
You know, I think we beat them by like 50 or something like that. So it was, you know, got a chance to play a little bit early. I think, you know, my freshman, really the biggest thing for my freshman year was a couple weeks later, getting significant action against Georgia. Being from Georgia, but also going to high school in Tennessee. So, you know, that goes back to, like you said, you know, one of those things about the bad stuff. You have people that are like, yeah, he moved to Tennessee because he didn't want to have to deal with Georgia high school football, which definitely wasn't the case. I was very sad I didn't get to play Georgia high school football, but, you know, just getting the opportunity to play in that game and play significant snaps against a really good Georgia team and a really good Georgia defense. You know, that was really cool. I would say that would probably be if you go back to my freshman year, that was probably the highlight of it. Was, you know, and then like I said, having some good carries, having some, you know, some good plays in that game. Even though we lost, because I swear to God, Boss Billy was not from this planet. Dude could jump literally to the top of the stadium and he blocked field goals. It didn't make sense. It was really unfair. And the crazy thing was we practiced for that too. Like we literally had, you know, our tallest guys standing there with, you know, with tackling dummies when we did field goals, and we still got it blocked. Like I still don't understand how that works, but you know, but that was really a good time.
Now,
Gerald, let me ask this real quick, Stephen. Gerald, you were talking about Georgia and playing against Georgia. We mentioned that you went to LSU before Nick Saban was Nick Saban, but Georgia, Mark Richt was there. He hadn't become Mark Richt yet.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you're from Georgia. I don't know you gave him the time of day or not.
Well, Mark Richt. Well, see. So here's a funny story about that. So I knew who Mark Richt was because growing up, I was an avid Florida State fan.
Okay.
Love Florida State. So I knew I knew exactly who Mark Richt was.
Mm-hmm.
And a crazy story in recruiting, Georgia didn't call me until November of my senior year.
Wow.
Georgia did not call me until November of my senior year. And I remember, and I already didn't like Georgia for several reasons, but I just remember them calling me and they were like, hey, you know, this is such and I want to say might have been Coach Gardner at the time. It wasn't even Coach Richt that called. It was, you know, one of the assistant coaches. And they were like, "Hey, man, are you interested in Georgia?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me? It's November, my senior year. I'm just now hearing from you." I was like, "No, thanks." I was like, appreciate the phone call, but I'll see you wherever I end up going. I'm pretty sure I'll get my chance at you.
Wow.
But yeah, that was crazy. Like they did not call me. And oddly enough, Florida State never called. That was the one offer I did not get that I wanted so bad, and I never got it. So it kind of made sense. It fueled my hate for Georgia even more, because I was like, damn, would you not offer me there either? But yeah, that was just how it worked out, man.
Texting.
Wow. That's insane. If Florida State would have called, would that have been a no-brainer for you?
Yeah. I would have went. I mean, because
Wow.
like I wouldn't, who didn't want to play for Bobby back then, right?
Right.
Like who didn't want to be on that roster playing for Bobby, having an opportunity to play for national championships, constantly ranked in the top 4 every year. You're in Tallahassee, Florida. I mean, dude, of course you want to go there. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it would have been a no-brainer had they offered, but they never called.
Wow.
So, Gerald, going back to the 2002 season, you got your first taste of what back then was a very nasty, salty rivalry in the third Saturday in October, the rivalry between Tennessee and Alabama. What do you remember most about your first third Saturday in October game there in 2002?
They whooped our ass that day. I remember that. We did not have a good day. It was awful. We got our ass kicked that day. We just couldn't seem to do anything right. And so and that was after watching Tennessee beat up on Bama for like the last 8 years, I think it was.
Oh, I have a story after this.
So we have the dubious distinction of being, on the first team to lose to Bama in like 8 years. So wasn't necessarily all that great to talk about, but there was I just remember that. And then also Coach Fulmer having to have security because I guess he dropped the dime on somebody or something like that. I don't know, whatever the story was. So he had to have security, which I thought was hilarious. That was probably one of the funniest things about it that I remember is he couldn't go. They would, or was that the next year when we went to Tuscaloosa? Yeah, that was the next year when we went to Tuscaloosa. He had to have security around him because he didn't want to get subpoenaed or something like that. It was nuts. But no, that was a great rivalry, man. I mean, got a chance to be part of some wins too. So it was a great rivalry. It's everything that you think it would be. It's physical, it's nasty. Guys, that week I remember that was kind of one of the things that Coach Fulmer had a lot of different sayings and a lot of different whatnots, but being a career Tennessee guy, it was kind of his thing that you really hadn't. It was like a rite of passage. You really hadn't grown up in the Tennessee program until you got your first action in that Alabama game. So that was all those games were special for their own reasons each year.
Yeah, Gerald, I was a brand spanking new media member at the time of that game. I was at that game. I was on the field, and I was a little irritated because I was the new guy on the block in media, and they were like, "Well, we're going to put you in the other media lot," and I'm like 1.5 miles from the stadium. And back then, that camera, that tripod was about 110 pounds.
Oh yeah, you had a workout that day, bud.
Oh yeah, and of course that's not a flat campus.
Nah. Look, I mean, look. Why do you think I didn't go to class that often? Shit, after workouts in the morning and all that, man, I ain't about to sit here and walk hills all day, man. Like, look,
that's right. But I remember I'm in this parking garage, and so I'm carrying this stuff. And there's this Alabama tailgater sitting there, and he sitting on his tailgate in the garage, and I kid you not, he's playing Sweet Home Alabama. And so I'm walking, and there's this guy.
He's brave. I'll give him that.
There's this guy. He is wearing white blue jeans. He's got on a white hockey Tennessee sweater. And he's got a big orange tee on it. His girlfriend is dressed in white blue jeans. She's got on a white shirt, these big, huge orange earring, big poofy hair, bigger the hair, closer to God. But, I'm sitting there, and we just happened to meet where this Alabama fan is tailgating in the parking garage. He's not outside. He's in the parking garage.
Uh-huh.
And so, anyway, this is when Alabama's on probation,
Right.
and all this kind of stuff. And so this Tennessee fan in his white hockey jersey, his all white outfit, and his girlfriend in her all white outfit, the worst country accent I've ever heard in my life. Hey. And so the Bama fan looks
I'm pretty sure there was a little bit of whiskey behind that accent too.
I guarantee you on both sides there were. He's like, hey, good luck in your bowl game. He keeps walking off. And what the hell was that? But it gets better. We go to this game. Alabama wins, as you mentioned. So I'm lugging all this equipment back to the garage. The Bama buses are right there to pick up the band, and they got all their majorettes. Or what do they call it? The Crimsonettes? Is that what they call it?
Crimsonettes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The Crimsonettes are standing out there, and the cheerleaders and this and that. They're all standing out there. These grown men, these Tennessee fans, or excuse me, these it was these Tennessee fans are on top of this parking garage, and they're yelling down all these insults to the Crimsonettes. I mean, they were saying things that would make sailors and truck drivers blush.
Yeah,
I mean, they were just saying these horrific things. And I was like, wow.
Well,
so anyway, this Bama fan, who it wasn't a little whiskey, it was a lot of whiskey. There's about 4 men. They probably looked like they were in their 50s. And they were sitting there, and he's like, hey, you blankety blank, 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 why don't you come down here and say that to my face? And so anyway, they start yelling insults. And then one guy's like, good luck in your bowl game, you blankety blank, mother trucker, blankety blank, blank, blank. And this guy grabs himself, pulls out a cigar. He was the drunkest of the bunch. He goes, aloha, my ass is going to Hawaii. Because Bama had that game, that last game of the year against Hawaii.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Because they weren't going to go to a bowl game, so they scheduled a Hawaii game.
I wish I had my cameras rolling for all the insanity I have seen before the game, during the game, after the game, because I have definitely seen the worst of humanity today.
Yes.
Oh yeah, like that. It's not when you go to really any SEC game, right? Like you're going to see the worst. You're going to see grown adults on the worst behavior,
absolutely,
that you've ever seen in your life. That's why I tell people that come from up north or out west that when they come out for their first big time SEC game, and you run into them. I've had that happen to me several times where I meet people, as we're walking around tailgating, and I'm like, "Where are you from?" They're like, "Man, I'm from California, man. I ain't never seen an SEC game, and I'm out here, and it's Tennessee Georgia week, or it's Tennessee Bama, or it's Tennessee Florida, or something like that." And I'm like, "Well, you're in for a damn treat, buddy." Mm-hmm. I was like, "You're gonna see some of the worst behavior you ever seen." I'll never forget. We were playing LSU in that 2005 game after Katrina. And we were, I don't know if you remember as a media member, but on the backhand where the visitor buses had to come through for down there at Tiger Stadium, it was like a narrow lane that they had to drive through, right? So if you know, right? So there is a narrow lane where all of our buses are coming through, and our buses are stacked behind each other. And I'll never forget, we had, the sweet lady who was part of, like one of the ladies that would help out, student athletes and do all this sort of stuff. She traveled with us all the time. And this was back when we had Nextels, Nextel phones, and they had the chirp on it and whatever. And I remember getting the radio chirp come through, and she's like, "Hey baby, you guys doing all right up there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we're doing good. Like, what's going on?" And she was like, "Well, they don't broke out the damn window back here." And because our buses were, like I said, stacked behind each other, and they had started like pushing and rocking our buses. And this was before that game. We're both top 10 teams, so they're pushing and rocking that bus. But the funniest part about that was, we're getting the bus rocked. I'm laughing. I think it's hilarious. Other guy, you got some guys like, "Man, this is crazy." I look over, and it's a Clemson game or LSU game, you know, you got the girls running around, they got the tiger tails and all that sort of stuff. And there's this lady had to be pushing 80 years old. She had to be. Like she had to be at least 80 years old. Couldn't have been any younger than that. But she was dressed like she was 15, right?
Oh,
like
boy.
She had on the tiger tail, you know, low cut shirt with all the beads and all the stuff, and you know, a little hat on, and she's swinging her tail, and she realizes that it's our bus. So she walks casually over to a keg, fills her cup up, and then just hurls it right at the bus. And I was like, this is gonna be one hell of a day, buddy. This is gonna be awesome. I was like, I got a feeling the day is gonna be real good. Because and it was crazy because you like that's literally what they were doing. Like that's what happened to the bus behind us. Somebody threw a full beer can and shattered the bus window behind us. And then, like I said, other fans were throwing full cups of beer. And I was like, y'all just wasting beer. I was like, I don't understand, man. Like y'all just wasting good beer. You know, I was like, I'm sure you could pick up something else off the street, throw it at us, but no, they wanted to waste good beer. So, you know, which probably made it worse because they got their ass kicked that night. But
well, common sense and LSU don't ever go in the same sentence.
Yeah. Now, but I'll tell you what though, that's one hell of a place to go and tailgate and watch a game though.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Best tailgate in the world. In
the food, the people, the accents, all of that stuff, man. Oh,
Gerald, you there? Gerald, you got us?
I think you got a phone call.
Yeah,
we got you now. We got you now.
Got us?
Okay,
can you
sorry
hear
about
us?
That.
Yeah, you're fine. Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Oh yeah. So no, I was just saying that LSU was probably one of the best places to go and tailgate and watch a game. But like I said, I'll never forget that when you're talking about just crazy stories. In hearing all sorts of stuff. Actually, another funny story was we were getting ready to play Georgia in 2004. I'll never forget this. We were getting ready to play them in 2004. They had just beat defending national champions LSU, who were the national champions that previous year. They had just beat them the week before. So they were undefeated. Their fans are, of course, Georgia fans. You got grown ass men barking at you, which I never understood. But I'll never forget me and a buddy of mine who was a starting safety, Brandon Johnson at the time. We always made sure we were next to each other when we came out, the locker room to go to the game, to play the game. And I'll never forget, we keep hearing 38-31, 38-31. And we're like, who in the hell it keeps calling? Like, so we look up, and I don't know if you remember where the visitors would come out at Georgia, but, they had that overhang where, the fans were basically right there on top of you, probably about, 15 feet up, 15, 20 feet up. And we look up, and it's this little kid, can't be no older than like 7 or 8 years old, right? And he's like 38-31. So we finally look up at him, and he goes, "Hey." And we're like, so me and Brandon both look at him. We were like, back at you, kid.
Wow.
So look, man, there was no telling what you were going to see on the road, man, at SEC games. And I'm pretty sure, and now as a spectator, man, going to Tennessee games, I love our fan base more, just about as much as you can love any fan base. But we sure as hell earned the title that we've earned over the last few years.
Gerald, I'll
being one of the craziest fan bases out there.
I wish I could remember the walk-on that told me the story, and I can't remember if I was at a church function, a business function, at a yard sale, or wherever I was. I can't remember. This was years ago. I heard this story, but there was this walk-on player at Ole Miss, and he found out that I went to state, and we were talking, and he found out I was in media, and so I was like, "Oh, I know so-and-so. I've interviewed this guy," and so we were sharing stories and this and that. So we started talking about the Egg Bowl. And everything was fun and upbeat and everything. He said, the hardest I've ever laughed in my life. He said, we pulled in, I forgot what year, late 90s, I think, mid-90s, whatever it was, into Starkville. And
that was the good days for y'all, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely it was. And He said right there by the old YMCA building, post office, and the Union. There's a street right there that goes to the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, but there's also a park bench right there. And he said this man had to be in his 80s, if not late 80s. He said that he had a cane, and he saw the Ole Miss buses coming. And he said, and we were stopping because you're right there by the stadium when you're at that little spot. You're probably 30 yards from it. And a lot of buses do park right there, and teams walk to the stadium. And he said,
"This is in Starkville."
Yeah.
Let's say again.
This is in Starkville.
Yeah, in Starkville. And he said this old man is like reaching down, grabbing his cane. He said he's having problems reaching down, and he said he's getting that cane. He said it probably takes this guy 20 seconds to get up, and he's like shuffling, getting on the end of the bench, and he's like getting both hands on the cane and pushing himself up. And he stands up and grabs himself and shoots them the bird. He said the entire bus just died laughing. He says that this guy's on his deathbed.
Yeah.
But I tell people, I was like, this is what makes the SEC great.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's people lose their mind come game day, and that's what makes it fun. Those guys, he goes, I've told that story 1,000 times. And he said, but our entire team was like, is this guy okay? Like he said, we're watching the entire time, just waiting for our turn to get off the bus. It's like, is he okay? It looks like he's trying. By that time, he finally stands up, grabs himself, shoots the bird, and yeah. And he said, we laughed and laughed all through pregame. We laughed. We looked at each other in the locker room and did it. He said, we did it all day. And he said, we don't know if that guy made it to the game. We don't even know if that guy made it alive 10 minutes from the end. And he said, but because we laughed and laughed and laughed.
I got a question for you, man. How in the hell did you deal with that smell down there, man?
Down where?
Starkville.
I'll
never forget. We pulled in there to play. We pulled in there to play Mississippi State my freshman year, and I was like, "God damn, does it smell like cow shit every day down here?" Like, dog, like this is like, dude, it was awful. Like it was. I never forget. I had the worst experience on that trip. We won that game, but I'll never forget. We fly down there. We had to stay in Tupelo,
which is normal,
right? Which is normal for everybody, but your phone didn't work, or at least if you didn't have, some guys had I think T-Mobile at the time. If you had T-Mobile, your phone didn't work.
Wow.
So I remember having, guys trying to, hey man, can I borrow your phone so I can call my mom? And I'm like, man, get the hell out of here. Like I'm trying, and so phones didn't work. Remember we got to the stadium, and I don't know if you ever saw it, but in the visitor locker room, it had basically been stripped bare bones. Like you could see the piping.
Mike Leach has told stories about that locker room.
You could see the piping, right? Like all through, the shower piping and all that sort of stuff. Freaking ants everywhere. Like I literally had ants in my I had ants in my bag for a week. Like I got back to Knoxville. And I was pulling stuff out of my bag, from the weekend from my travel bag. And I was like, I got damn ants in my bag that I brought all the way from freaking Mississippi, right? And then it was terrible because I broke my finger that day.
Oh,
I broke my finger that day, in which I would have had over 100 yards. But I'll never forget. I was getting ready. Tall sweep play. I'm getting ready to take off, and I forget who it was. I want to say it was whoever the safety was at the time. But I went to stiff arm. He grabbed my finger. He grabbed my hand where my finger had already broken, and I had just had it wrapped up because I was like, "Hey, man, it's my freshman year. Like, I'm not gonna miss any opportunity I get to get in here and play." So I was like, "Hey, man, just take that thing and let's go." And the guy grabbed my finger, and my finger was literally broken in half like this. So I still have 3 permanent pins from that injury, that like watch size pins that are in my finger. So that's how bad it was, but it was broken in half. And I remember he grabbed it like this when I went to go stiff arm, and I just hit the ground. Because I was like, all right, man, that's the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. I was like, I'll stop running if you just let go of my hand. So I just remember it was just a horrible weekend. Right. And then I was like, and then, my girlfriend at the time, she made fun of me because I broke my hand. So I broke my finger. So they had me in this stupid cast that was like this. So she called me Captain Hook for like the next 2 months. So, so that was always, that was great. But yeah, man, I just, Mississippi State does not bring back fond memories for me at all.
I'll let Steven go. I see. I know you got a question, but Mike Leach talked about the locker room. I want to see if it was the same when you were there. When Mike Leach was OC at Kentucky, he said that and Mike Leach is big on mental warfare and things like this, but he said the locker room, the visiting locker room at Mississippi State, he goes, you walked in, he goes, it was stripped of everything. It goes, just a big cement block. There's no lockers. There's no nothing. Yeah. And he said,
we had wooden. It was probably bad then because we had like wooden lockers, but they looked like they'd been in there for 100 years.
Well, Leach said there was nothing, no benches, no chairs, no nothing. And he said he went and counted. He goes, there's 32 nails on the wall, nothing hanging. There's 2 toilets right in the middle of the locker room, no stall.
Yeah.
And 1 roll of toilet paper.
Yeah. Like, so the toilets were in the middle. The piping was, exposed. So you could see the copper, all the stuff. And of course, it's been worn down. It's all green, and everything. And then, the shower, the shower was in the same place you had to, use the bathroom. So that was even worse. But the thing, and then what made it even worse was the water was brown.
What?
Yeah, I'm not kidding. Like, this is a true story. The water was brown. Like, you turn the water on and it was brown. It wasn't like, clean water. It was like, bro, where am I at, man? This is nuts. And then to make it even worse, they didn't have any hot water. There was no hot water, which, I'm pretty sure they did that on purpose.
Right.
But there was no hot water. So, to mind you, I broke my finger that particular weekend, had ants in my bag,
brown water,
and didn't take a shower all weekend because the water was brown everywhere we went. So I was like, nah, man, I'm not taking a shower in that. I was like, there ain't no way. I'm not drinking that water. Wow. I'm not taking a shower in that water. I'm not doing nothing. And then, so we had to take a flight, short flight back to Knoxville after the game was over. And I just remember getting back to Knoxville and acting like, I had been, off the planet for 10 years and was like, man, I'm so happy to be back home so I could take a shower.
Right.
Get my finger fixed, man, and never have to go back to Mississippi ever again, or at least not to Starkville.
So, Greg, I do want to ask you about one game in particular, your 2003 season. During that season, in the middle part of the SEC schedule, Tennessee stepped out of conference to go on the road and play Miami, a school that you really wanted to go to. What was that experience like of going down there and playing Miami, and what are some of the highlights of that football game?
Well, let's see. We started with the bad with every other story, right? So we'll keep the theme going. It was in November. It was the first week of November, so it's cool in Knoxville. We get off the plane down there, it's freaking 90 degrees, man. We're like, holy shit, it's hot, right? So you're like, man, by that time your body's gonna kind of acclimated to playing in some cooler weather,
right?
Nah, man, it was typical Miami weather. It was hot, humid, nasty. So, going out there for that game. But now the fun part was, so if you ever played in the old Orange Bowl Stadium, you realize that it's an off-campus stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And they were one of the few college campuses, now they can do it everywhere, but they were one of the few college campuses where they could sell beer at the actual stadium.
Yeah.
So we had glass beer bottles. We had glass Bud Light bottles thrown at us during pregame. Which was pretty cool. And I remember we almost got into a fight with Miami because they tried to walk through our warm-up because they're on the opposite end of the locker room, so they have to walk back. And instead of going down the sideline, they tried to literally walk through it, and we were like, hell no, we're not playing that game today.
Right.
So we got into a little bit of a pregame tussle with them. And, the locker room that we were in was kind of, wasn't as bad as Mississippi State's for other reasons. But at the same time, it was like, you were on top of each other. Like if you didn't have any, it was pretty much like, hey, if you weren't playing, I need you to get out the way so we can get dressed, right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If you weren't, because there was just no space. But I remember, the previous year in 2002, they came to Knoxville and handed it to us pretty good, right? So we were getting ready to go out there for that game, and I'll never forget. We're sitting in the locker room, and it's kind of quiet moment. Everybody's just kind of getting ready, getting mentally prepared, I guess, to go out there and play. And Jabari Greer, Jabari Greer cuts on the stereo, and I think is it Sam Cooke that plays the song "It's Been a Long Time Coming."
Yeah.
He cuts that song on, and the whole locker room starts singing it, right? In unison, like in unison. As soon as it comes on, everybody looks up, everybody starts singing it. Coach Fulmer didn't even have to give a pregame speech. We just went out there. We went out there and physically just beat the living crap out of those guys. And wasn't much on the scoreboard, but physically, it was one of those games that you put whooping on somebody like that, the other team remembers, and they definitely remembered that one.
Gerald, you were there with Coach Fulmer. Coach Fulmer gets a bad rap. He got a bad rap how he got the Tennessee job. He got a bad rap with all the stuff.
I'll leave that one alone, man.
Yeah, he didn't leave on his terms.
Right.
But I've talked to several players over the years, and they say nothing but nice things about Coach Fulmer.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, the media has always painted Phil Fulmer as this villain, this bad guy, this punk, this backstabbing, backbiting, guy. Talk about the good of Phil Fulmer.
I'll say this about Phillip Fulmer. He was the type of coach that he knew what to say at the right time, right? He knew how to get the guys going. He knew how to, he knew his stuff, and he knew, he was a coach that demanded, perfection in terms of how, the way that you prepare, mentally and physically to go out there and be ready every Saturday. I mean, people can say what they want about, how he got his job and this and that and the other. But at the end of the day, man, the guy loved Tennessee. He was a winner. And at the end of the day, he cared about his players, as much as you could think a coach could at that level. Right. Now, I think everybody has made a few decisions or said a few things that, they wish they could roll back.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure Phillip Fulmer's got a list of them. But at the same time, he was a guy that, like I said, man, if you're a football guy and love playing football and love the grind of going out there and, like I said, getting prepared during the off season, getting prepared and practicing hard and doing other things that you need to do to get ready, and then going out there and having fun playing the game, he was as good a coach as there was.
Right.
And so, when I look back on it, and sure enough, yeah, I mean, I had, me and Fulmer butted heads on a lot of issues. We definitely weren't always. We weren't always buddy, but at the same time, I respected him, right? I respected him what he did and what he was trying to do. It didn't finish up so well. And I think that, looking back on that probably was, I think that was a knee-jerk reaction to a lot of things that were going on, kind of in and around the program. And Tennessee had gotten kind of spoiled at that point in time in terms of, the fan base and everything that was going on, him winning a national championship in '98 and pretty much being close every year for the last, for the previous 2 years. And then the next 5 years, being close. So, I think everybody just kind of got a little bit spoiled with what was going on. And, like I said, man, I think it was a little bit of, looking back on it, I felt different at the time because of some things that I knew that a lot of people didn't know. But at the same time, looking back on it, it turned about to be a knee-jerk reaction to what, kind of what happened. We had that really bad year where pretty much half of us, including myself, got hurt in 2005 before we even got halfway through the season. Right. In a year that, pretty much we were penciled in to play for a national championship. And, I think that just left a sour taste in everyone's mouth. And so, when he didn't follow that up, he came back the next year and had a good year. But then, in 2000, I think it was 2007 when they had a really, had another bad start, and then they lost to Wyoming. That was kind of, I think that was what really drove the stake in him. So, it was unfortunate the way he had to go out like